My name is Aiden Walker. I'm a design journalist for many, many years. I've edited or managing edited pretty much all the professional UK design magazines. Since for about the last 10 years, I've been curating and presenting and hosting events quite like this. At the moment, I'm working on 2 design exhibitions in China. But when I say design, I don't mean collectible design. I mean the design that I think of as design, which is like design that works. So what we have here, I'm going to read you a little bit of text that the ladies who basically have made the Collectible Design Fair in Brussels. I'm going to read that. First of all, I'm going to tell you who we've got on the panel. Basically, we've got, although there are 5 people here, there's 2 designers and 2 gallerists. And 1 designer is 2 because it's Kiki and Joost, although I don't think they probably think of themselves as designers, do they?
Yeah, well, half designer, yeah.
Half designer.
We don't want to be put in.
Yeah,
like a
exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. So there's Kiki and Joost, who now I've got some text to read. Established, renowned designers, it says here, with a large international clientele, currently working on a series of store windows for Hermes and their new studio, which is built to the standards of future living. I'm sure you know their work. Kiki's is lyrical, romantic, quite often, I suppose the imaginations are different. Joost's is much more engineering based, is much more influenced by that kind of thing. On Kiki's left is Thomas Balouet. Thomas is from France. He's a new talent working on the forefront of a new generation of designers. He's from the Design Academy here in Eindhoven. On his left is Benoit Wolfram. You can tell all you need to know about Benoit because he is one of the founders of the Functional Art Gallery. I think that's in Berlin. Is that right, Benoit? Okay, so the frontiers of collectible design are hitting Berlin, and Benoit is right there. And on the far left is a figure who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Alexis Ryngaert is the founder of the design art gallery Victor Hunt, one of Brussels' precursors in positioning design as contemporary art, and is very successful at representing the likes of Sabine Marcellus, Tomás Alonso, Quango Lee, and Commonplace Studio. What's going to happen is each one of the 4, Kiki and Joost, together, and then each one of them are going to talk for a few minutes about themselves, their work, and what they think about the topic and their responses to the topic. Then we're going to have a bit of discussion right here on the stage, and then you guys are going to join in. And one of us is going to help with bringing a microphone to you so we can hear what your questions are. So here's the topic, and this is, as I say, comes from the 2 good women who have generated and founded the Collectible Art Fair. At DDW Talks, or DDW, as I'm given to understand it said here in Holland, Art and Collectible, we dive into the collectible design ecosystem, where specialists from both the art and design industry share their insights and reflect on the latest initiatives to expand the collectible design market, as well as the market for tech and experience-based art. Lonica and Ralph of Drift and Martin Baas have already spoken. So now we have, as I say, a more broad-based take on this whole idea. It's really about how the art market, or how the way the art market works, can be exploited to support the development and the expansion of what I think is probably we best call collectible design. But I've got a number of things that I want us to talk about, and one of those is the difference between design and art, because I have to say, even though these good people may not get hung up on it, it is something that I kind of get hung up on. So let's ask Kiki and Joost to kick off.
All right. Well, thank you.
You can stand up if you like.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, should we? Yeah. All right.
Do a dance.
So, yeah, here the presentation of a brand new identity, for us very important. Not only as designers, but also we'd like to show in every aspect of our work what we do and what we love and who we are. So that's why our new identity that was launched last April was very important to us. Also, the way we make things, we draw our identity. We make brush strokes. We make colors by hand. We like to do and show our personality. So I see the order over there. That's handy.
It's also maybe important to tell that we work independently from each other. We have our own identity in our works and as a personality, but every now and then we do a joint collaboration. But in general, we use each other as discussion partners about each other's works.
Yeah. And we like to keep things very, very personal. So we work basically as an artist, as designers. So we start without a question of everyone. We are creators. That's why we have a big workshop where we can be creative and can make basically everything we want. If you want something else to be done, like laser cutting or CNC routing, we have companies around us that does those kind of things. But we like the really hands-on mentality and to make the things in our workshop. And the personality we also like to show in the work itself. For example, this is a project I did when I suffered from a super insomnia problem. I only slept like 3 hours a night. And during those nights, I was doodling all the time. And so I took objects home and did a doodling on them. So they're really sort of personal, sort of have emotional stories of my nights that I couldn't sleep. Other projects I do is in collaboration with clients. So here you see a sort of fireplace where I build around in my no screw, no glue, rough and shiny series. That's a long word for that. We cut all the pieces by hand. It's with a how do you call it? A plasma cutter, a blowtorch, and then we cut everything by hand. So there's no machinery to it, and we just are creators and sort of sculptures in that sense. Also here, it's a project I showed in Milan this year. It's about construction, it's about creating shapes, and it's a total free form. And I think it's important to make these kind of things to maybe become later an object, but it also can stay as abstract as this is.
The funny thing is also that Joost recently also did a project for an art collector that wanted him also not to give a function to an object. He saw a series that Joost made, which consisted of a desk, cabinet, and some other pieces. But he said, I really like the sculptural quality of it, so I don't want you to give it a function.
Yeah, and that resulted in a 4.5 meter high sculpture in his garden. It was very nice to work on. Another,
there's a mistake in the
there's a mistake in the picture, I'm sorry. So this discussion about art, design also is a bit in our work. Here I wanted to be, you see half of the picture, that's a shame, but I created a sort of a picture where I added a lamp. I wanted to create also the background of the object you sell. Normally you don't have any control over that, but I wanted to be a sort of dictator on also the background of a project. Sometimes you create something like this is, I call it a console, but it could be, any kind of object. I'm not sure. It's usable, but my intention is not to make a usable object. It's just to make a creation.
What is maybe important to tell is that next to this, we also do product designs for international brands, and even we just designed solar panels, something very technical, which doesn't look technical the way we designed it. So we do also the other part of the design world, but now we're just showing these unique pieces.
Yeah. This is a project I wanted to create my own Meccano set. So these are also all cut by hand to create this very personal and a special Meccano set to create a lamp, a table. I made a cabinet, all kind of objects, but also to give personality to what used to be a very industrial and prefab toy box. This is a bit older project. It's a stainless steel cabinet of almost 5 meters wide. For me, it was an expression of how to put things together without screw and glue. So it's a flat pack sort of furniture, and where it's normally flat pack furniture, very sort of cheap and a way to make things affordable and good transportable. This is a sort of outrageous outcome of that project. Also I did it last year and finalizing it this year for Kazerne here in Eindhoven. It's a part of the Protopunk series. For us also very easy to make, it's nice to make in a workshop. Also with a torch, handmade, everything customized. And it comes from, for example, this one. It's a cabinet or console. And from this console I got really a lot of orders from a gallerist to create also bespoke items hanging on the wall. One it was 2.5 meters high, one was 3 meters wide. It's very nice to create some special items from an existing piece.
Yeah, we both initiate projects by ourselves, also without a request. And also on request, so we work in both ways. We don't always wait till a client asks for something or a gallery, but we also just make the things because we feel a necessity to make it, and we're not going to wait for that. So this is a project called Space Poetry. It's about the relation between architecture and space, and it's a bit about the in-between world, about function and non-function. And it has a base of wood with a skin around it that we developed in our own studio of bioplastic mixed with sand and natural pigment. So this is where the first tryouts and samples. So to really give it a skin, like you with a palette knife, like you see in paintings. As designers, often we tend to use the material only as it is, or to polish it, or to give it a certain treatment, but I wanted to make really a skin. I do a lot of textiles as well. This is already an older series of wall hangings. I developed them in the Dutch Textile Museum in Tilburg. I have a very strong relationship with them. Whenever I have a design, in this case it's a kind of mini collage made of small textiles, which I photograph and then develop on a large scale in jacquard weavings. Whenever I do that, I go to the museum to stand next to the machine and to work with a technician to really develop different structures and textures. So I don't just send in the design and tell them, okay, produce it, but I really want to be there to develop in the lab and to see what happens if I change a yarn or a certain material. It has an effect on the whole design. This is a sketch of a project I showed last Milan called Freeform. We live just on the border of Eindhoven and a village in between the fields, and I made our whole garden. I planted everything and I work a lot in the garden as well, and I love it. And it also gives inspiration, not literally, but in a more abstract sense. When you work a lot and you are a lot in nature, you feel really close also to the repetitions you see in nature. So that gave me the inspiration of this project called Freeform. I was literally standing in my garden and drawing like hundreds of quick lines, freeform lines. And that resulted into a lighting series. This is one example. It consists of all small cups of ceramic, which has a 3D spacer in between, so the light always comes from the space in between, which is an indirect LED light. And this is something we develop in a workshop. I made the 2D drawings, and I gave it to a guy that works with us and said, can you give your 3D interpretation to that? So he did all kind of tests, and it's also really working together with our team in that. And so we finally got the good result in shape, and then we found out this technique with the LED and the ceramic, and now it's really easy to make any kind of size or proportion because it's just making that shape and filling it with cups. Here you see a piece of about 4 years ago. This is in our home. This is from the series This Daybed called Civilized Primitives. Inspired on survival methods, and it also tells us something about the history of, as human beings, we first, for example, were drinking out of our hands, and then slowly we designed cups, and it's also about evolution. And going back to that, I found all kind of branches in the forest that I put together as an A-frame. A-frame is a construction in survival methods. And then I polished one side to give the human touch to it, and the rest I kept as rough as the bark of the tree. Here you see a picture in our workshop of all those branches that we selected and literally shaved. And then we made molds around it, and then we had it casted.
Yes,
But
little
I don't know if I should say anything already about the
quickly,
theme.
quickly.
I think we both agree that what we really like is to make things custom in our workshop, and every time to do new experiments and to come up with new things. And we really like it if a gallery plays a good role in that by connecting you to a collector or client and bringing them also to your workshop and have an ongoing discussion with this client, because that makes even, I think, more bespoke items. And for us, artistically, that's most challenging part of it. So that would be really nice if that could be even developed a little bit further in the future.
Good.
sorry.
To Benoit. Benoit.
Thank you.
Very good. Benoit, before you start, I'm going to tell them a little bit more about what you claim to believe, which is who likes to describe functional art as design that crosses the line. But you could also describe it as art that has been made with the intention of function. And I think the interesting word there is not function, but intention.
Exactly.
Benoit Wolfram, let's hear what he's got to say.
Hi, everyone. And that's actually a really good introduction. The definition of functional art for me, and what's really interesting about it, is that it is actually about the intent. During the presentation, when I talk about it, I always interchange between art and design, and I always talk about artists and designers with no kind of line in between them, because I believe they're the same people with just different intentions. So I describe functional art as art that's being made with the intent and function. And that's important because I think and I believe it's art before and everything else. It just happens to be usable, but the function is not, in the end, the most important thing about the object. The idea why we created functional art is because I come from the real estate world, my business partner come from the contemporary art world, and the idea was to be able to bring on the forefront of the international art scene design that is up to par with the quality of the art, the contemporary art that's being made right now, because we believe that they're part of the same conversation and they are, just two sides of the same coin. So why have this incredible art being showed and being made, but not pay any attention to the amazing, incredible design that's being made at the same time? We're a very young gallery. We opened with a group exhibition last year called Functional Art in September in Berlin. So it means a lot for me to be here because we're actually so young. It's the first time we're really having the chance and the opportunity to present what we've been doing. So it's kind of an early retrospective for me, which is kind of fun. We've done a lot in this year, but really always our goal is to be able to show in a contemporary art context amazing design that's being made right now. So our first mission was kind of to bring design in art fairs. This is an example of Frieze, London, last year. The same set then came to FIAC. And then, the idea was to parallelize that kind of project and to work with designers to have them be able to create, a furniture set that would be in direct conversation with contemporary art. So that was something that we really wanted to do, is to choose and handpick designers and artists that we like and give them, really an opportunity to be shown at the highest level of contemporary art. And that's our goal. That's something we're going to continue to do because, as you can see on those images, the design is really in the conversation with the contemporary art. And we want them to be presented on the same level. Something that was really important to us over the past years, kind of to introduce our vision to the world. And so over the exhibitions and the fairs we've been doing, we've always chose to do solo projects with artists so that they could really, enforce their vision and really give them the opportunity to produce something that's really going to the extent of what they want to do. This is Design Miami in December last year with a young French designer who graduated from the Design Academy called Théophile Blondet. So we really gave him the opportunity to create with this project around unrecyclable plastic, an opportunity to create a complete environment, and kind of his idea was to create this living room from the future where plastic has become so toxic and unproducible that we use it like gold and we recycle it, we use it like ivory and like precious metals. So he really wanted to subvert and create this new type of typology where plastic becomes something precious and not something that we chastised. We did the same thing with young duo Horta Miklos in Design Miami Basel in June this year, and then again, using historical reference and architectural points, they created this, tablinum, which used to be a Roman household living room, but created it in a new kind of, again, typology, using their own language to show that there is a new way to create an environment which we want to live in. We also started presenting works in art fairs, and so get out of the context of the design. And so this was presented in LA in February with Anna Jensen, who's a designer, again, from the Design Academy in Eindhoven, who created this, social design where the seats are only reserved for women. So it's a social commentary on the difference between the space that men take in the public sphere versus what women allow themselves as a space to take. And so she created the seats to encourage women, and only for women, to be able to have more space in the public sphere. So then, this project, for example, really exemplify what we do, is that, those chairs, you can sit on them, but in the end, the concept of the social commentary is more important than the function. And so that's why, for me, it's art rather than design, if we want to oppose them. But once again, they're the same thing. 2 examples of the Nomad St. Maurice Fair with design duo BNAG, and then Horta Miklos again at the Collectible Fair last year. Those are just examples of shows that we've done at the gallery always. We've done solo shows, again, to give an opportunity to young designers to really express their work and be able to go deeper in their practice and to find what they want to do. So this one in January, young design duo BNAG, German designers, who really created their own language and playful, and they created those tapestry that they put on the walls. And those chairs are actually the chair from an episode of the Teletubbies that's meant to teach children how they use a chair, which is something you never really think about as an adult anymore. Like, why would you think about how to use a chair? And yet it's something that we need to teach children. So it's also a way for them to reflect on the usage of those objects that seems so evident to us, but then needs to be taught. Some other example of a solo exhibition at the gallery, Horta Miklos. This was Finn Meyer, Théophile Blondet. So by doing art fairs, presenting works on contemporary art fairs, presenting works on design fair in the gallery, we really wanted to expand the kind of typology and the kind of outlets that the designers have. Because we realized that young designers, when they go out of school, they don't necessarily have an opportunity or know where to present their work. But we want to expand that again. So we also did several collaborations with people that are looking further into and that are looking beyond what typically the field of design is. For example, this installation was made for fashion designer Kiko Kostadinov, and where the design acts as a support for the collection. This was a museum exhibition in the Museo Marino Marini, where, again, the work has been made in reaction with this traditional Italian sculpture. And so, again, ask the question of where does design belong? This is a current show at the K11 Foundation in China. Once again, it's traditionally an art space, an art foundation. And yet again, when you present design in it, but present it at artworks, you ask yourself the question, what is it? Is it designed because we choose to use it as design, or is it designed because we just choose to not look at it for the aesthetic values? I think the typology is starting to get more and more blurred and is changing. For example, this is an image from the really, really amazing show right now at the Fondation Louis Vuitton of Charlotte Perriand, where institutions and the public is starting to look at her work, not from a classic point of view of like she made those amazing chairs for Cassina. That's not the idea. The idea is to really reflect on her work, on the language she developed, and all those amazing products and artworks that she created over her career. And it's presented with art collection, it's presented with drawings and paintings, because they belong together. The last thing I wanted to talk about is that functional art is not a new concept. It's always existed, it always was. The design was always presented up to par with the art, and somehow it kind of changed over the last decades or years. This is an image of Peggy Guggenheim's gallery, The Art of the Century, in the 40s when she moved to New York. And she was always presenting her art in an innovative way, and she asked always systematically artists to create furniture to go with her art. So back in the 40s, she was thinking about how you live and how you interact with your design and how you interact with your art and how you can live with both. So that's our mission, that's what we've been doing, and I guess that ends my introduction.
Thank you, Benoit. Thomas, you're at the leading edge. Tell us how and why.
Well, hello. Not interesting. All right, so start with my work. This was my graduation work 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it was using temporary materials, cardboard, polystyrene, rubber bands, and petrifying them, solidifying them. It was really based on the technique. It's usable. I did a series of objects, but I also quite quickly went over the technique and tried to have a narrative, some part of works of fiction inside. This is something I did the year after graduating, so it's still the same technique, but there's found objects and there's a narrative behind it. It was all materials that you could find I imagine in an abandoned office, and people from, I don't know, 1,000 years in the future, when some kind of apocalypse happened, would find these objects, piece them together, make something that they could with something that only makes sense today. I'm thinking of the aluminum blinds. If we see them as they are, it's just strips of aluminum. But so continuing on this fiction, little worlds of fiction, I also did these works, called it Waiting Room, with a multi-plug, a coat hanger, and a seat. And it was, once again, it's collage from found materials, found object. It's very much a studio practice with what I find, what I can do. The multi-plug earlier became also this, a lamp, a switch. It's still, once again, still some very modern or contemporary objects that are put together in a very basic, primitive way with contemporary materials. I often work like this, very instinctively on materials that the 21st century allow us to do. This is a aluminum shelf, plasma cutter again. We've seen it a few times already. And once again, it's very intuitive, but it's something that is possible only because of the tools that we have in the 21st century. It's something very, very on the spot. And it's always, my work also jumps from one to another. Before it was only aluminum, this now is wood. And this was shown in Antwerp in the Everyday Gallery, Boris. And after a big part of this, my personal work, but a big part of my work is also in collectives. This was with Dutch Virtuals, and it was group shows, a bit where you're a bit more involved, and well, with collectives you're a bit more involved, and in group shows you really take time to talk about scenography, talk about the works of others, and I really enjoy this way of working, also because the group gives you a sort of energy and makes you want to go beyond. And so this is with another collective, better known as, that was shown in Milan. And we tried to play with the exhibition format in the same way we play with materials. So the two pictures on the side are studio pictures that were taken during the exhibition. In the middle, it was the exhibition. So we brought a lot of objects, and every day we would make a selection of objects and build a set to make the pictures. And then now, since a year, I work with Morph, with Leo Horta, Théophile Blondet, Anna Jensen, Audrey Large, Clémentine Schmidt, and we try to. This is where the line between art and design is completely non-existent for us. We're trying to make a total environment. So in the back you see a video of Misha Gurovic. There's a fountain, there's also some pictures that are printed, 3D renders, and yeah, for us, we get together as a group because we have a similar way of working, even though the outcome is radically different, but we have a common ground on the process of making. So this was in Milan, trying to make a full environment. We had an exhibition in Brussels, Collectible. I think I didn't put a slide, but in Collectible it was a underground casino, and this was in beginning of September in Burgundy in France, where we were invited to make an exhibition in a castle. So we're back to little narratives. There's two little stories. On the left is it's the king's room. On the right is the queen's room. And we actually try to make total environments. Try to set up actually a set so it doesn't stop at objects. We got a video in the middle of the room. On this side, it was for the queen's room. There was a VR work of Clémentine Schmidt that was happening on Anna's daybed, and for us, it's really this need of putting everything together because we want to make stuff, whether it's design or art, it doesn't really matter anymore, and we want to show also what an exhibition could be, than more than just showing an object or a painting, but try to play with the format of an exhibition. So, and now we get to what we could do as designers. To answer the question, this is, I think, as designers in art, there's this artist-run spaces that make really good work, and I think as designers we should also have this kind of initiatives, kind of endeavors. And this is Deborah Bowman in Brussels. They are a duo whose gallery is actually their graduation work. I won't get too much into it, but the format of their exhibition changed a lot. So on the left, we've got a bakery, actually. They were invited to a fair in Amsterdam, and they decided to do a bakery. Once again, it's really about wanting to make stuff, whether it's pastry or art or design. It's just we want to make stuff, whatever the outcome. They also made a shoe store. It's really cardboard shoes, but I think it's very fun, full of energy. And on the right, it's work from Tom Volkert, which is a bit more. Tom is a full-on artist, I would say, but he makes objects, as you can see. So yeah, artist-run spaces. I think it's a good way of experimenting, of making an embryo of an idea grow. This is Cyprien Gaillard. On the left is a work that he did. I think he was still in École, in the art school, and it was in this gallery, 1 meter cube. I think it doesn't exist anymore, but we've got this little pyramid that he later did in Berlin, in the Kunstwerk in Berlin. So I think it's really really express what the artist-run space can bring to an artist's work. But this is another example. Clémence Sey. It starts. This project went on different places, in galleries, in artist-run spaces, in institution. But it started as a living room, actually. On the left up there, you can see it's just a couch and a few instruments, a living room where friends would come in and play. On another occasion, she brings another project, and it becomes a rehearsal room where the accent is more put in the instruments. You can see on the big picture on the bottom on the left, it's different instruments that she found, and on the right, this copper thing is another instrument that she made, and so step by step, it gets to another level, and the last level is here on the full left, and it was in Amsterdam. This was a full-on recording session, Mortal Recordings. She called it like this, and so it was. She invited a bunch of people, and they actually have a SoundCloud if you want to listen to it. Pretty mystical music. But this record thing brings me to another part that I find very interesting as a designer or artist. We all have our own fascination, and we of course put it in our work. And but these personal fascinations, we take them quite seriously. So on the left we have David Douard, a very established artist, who works a lot with poetry. He calls it deep poetry, I think, some kind of post-internet poetry. Makes record out of it, and I know he puts out records of his poems that becomes a record. And on the right is the work of Erwan Sene, who himself as well is a music producer, but has photographer friends, and the project on the right is very much a photography project, but with sculptures around it as the frame. And he's recently, or right now, he has a restaurant that the restaurant is the project it's part of his music label, Proxy label. And you can see, I don't know if you can read it. Proxy is a label promoting music through a mixed media approach. The first release will be delivered as a sound and culinary experience. So I think as designers, we're a bit stuck onto producing objects, whereas we all have a very personal fascination. I've said this, but it's something that we take seriously, that we feed from. And in the art world is something, there's publications left and right that come out, and I think it should be considered as a possible outcome for our will to make stuff. On the right is paintings from Antoine Orphée, and he recently put out a collection of Menko. It's Japanese bootlegs of comics, and he's very thorough in his collection, and I think it makes sense to, when you see the Menkos and his paintings, there's the same idea. So maybe maybe these collections that we all have in our computer lying around are not artworks as themselves, but as a part or a side work. I think they're totally relevant. For example, on the right, this is the book of Melchior Tersen, a photographer who maybe 10 years ago had to take pictures of the Hellfest, became obsessed by these metal patches, and he's been collecting it since 10 years, and he started his own jackets, and he put a book that is very good. You should look it up. That's it. Thank you.
Alexis, I think you're one of those people who can claim to be at the forefront, aren't you? The gallerist who, more or less invented collectible art? No? Well, tell us then. So Alexis got some film which he wants to be played while he speaks.
I want to warn you all, I'm the worst public speaker. I also still need to work out how this is not mine. No. Maybe try another one? Do I push something? See? So, but in short, I founded and directed Victor. It works here. Yeah, that's one. It's still another one that I had in mind, but fair enough. So I've founded and directed Victor Hunt since. In short, what we do is we give designers a platform. That's what I do. That's also why I don't like to stand here. That's why I don't like to speak out. I think it's more up to the designers to do what they do, and we follow them. We try to enable them to go bigger, bolder, better. Is something you'll hear quite a lot, probably. But yeah, at some point, you know, we're going to be talking here about what is functional art, design art, collectible design, and quite honestly, if you ask me, let's look back at it in 20, 25 years maybe, and then look what happens. Because in the end, we're trying to analyze what's happening today, which I think is maybe not really worth the effort. But a big part of what I've been doing over those last few years is digital craft, which runs a bit along with what we've seen from Studio Drift, for example, and a few other ones. And I've made a stand in that, and I'm going to continue to do that. But it's not, I think the discussion we're going to be having today is about business, and a big part is about that. Where do we position ourselves? How do we do that? Money, editions, all these kind of things. But I like to think that just my main effort is to give designers a platform and to see always the origins of something that could be magnificent, but then in tiny. And we're now looking at, well, this is a project I never saw it. The designers presented it to me. I didn't see it until it was built, because obviously I have to see a concept. They're not building it. They're just telling me, oh, we're going to make this, and that's not always easy. But there are other ones. I don't know if this is going to work. No, that just speeds ahead. Let's try again. Can we go to the next one or something next? I don't know. In general, a big part of my job is that seeing what could be and then trying to make that become. All right. And so I'm just having these ones run along as some kind of a support, but I think this is well, this is a project that is going to be, which isn't existing yet, but yeah, a big part of how we design art, collectible design, you know, functional art. I don't know where to put this. We're going to make them into, just to talk a bit, these are going to be fireflies. So they'll be lights in some kind of way. So they'll be designed because they'll be developed. We'll be tweaking technology to do something to do different than that it's supposed to be doing. And then it will do this. If this is designed, quite honestly, I don't know, but I like it. So I'll show it, I'll present it, and then it's up to the people, it's up to the audience to say, like, we'll believe in it. And it's in the end up to a collector to say, like, oh, I'll put down oh so many Ks. That's worth it for me. And that is basically the moment that somebody says, well, it's good. That's basically my opinion is being validated. And yeah, well, I've been doing it for 10 years. So I think a big part of what we'll be doing is a panel discussion about all these kind of aspects. You can shoot me any questions you have. And we'll go from there, I guess. No? If that works for you. Voila.
We actually haven't got a hell of a lot of time. While you guys have been talking, I've been sitting here thinking, how can I put all these things into one question? And I think I'm sort of gonna make an attempt at it. But I've got a list of things that I was hoping that we were going to discuss here today, and they are size of market, both in the number of practitioners and the amount of money that we're looking at in, call it collectible design again. Is it growing? Is there some sort of special thing to do with the Netherlands and Belgium, which, as we were talking about earlier, you know, where it seems to be much more developed, much more accepted into both the cultural and commercial life than it is, for instance, in the UK or the United States? Three things beginning with F: fashion, form, and function. Art for interiors, so an interior designer or someone who owns a house or is just building a house is looking to acquire something that works in the strictly functional term but also has an expressive quality. Materials, I want to come back to that one. Craft, which is the importance of making things with your hands, the importance of dealing with your hands. The question about sustainability, you know, the world of design where I come from, I've written in black and white that if it isn't sustainable, it isn't design. It isn't called design. It shouldn't even be called design because, you know, designer's responsibility, and I think that's different from the kind of designers that we're talking about here, as far as I'm concerned, have a responsibility to save the world. You know, if they don't, who is? Certainly not the President of the United States.
Yeah. At some point, you know, we're making design for us, not
Right.
for the world. And we're trying, I think a big part of what I'm going to be saying is that design art, well, at least that's the word I like to use, and I've got it in my brand in some kind of way, is that it's a sensorial experience. At some point, you want that chair to go beyond. You want not only to make it functional, you also want it to touch you emotionally. But these kind of pieces, obviously, that I just showed are more purely sensorial. They might give a little bit of light, and I think it's very important to take care that we are comfortable. That's one thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we are intrigued, that we are passionate by things that we see, that we are taken by something, if I can put it that way. And,
Absolutely.
And that's a function.
Yeah,
that's saving ourselves.
You're going to speak.
Yeah.
Much better than me. Come on, speak.
So what we always think is very important, if you create something that people are not going to throw away, it's better to make something that is recyclable, for example. So I once made a whole interior out of cardboard, and it came on all these eco websites and green stuff, and people are like, oh, this is super eco-friendly. And I started to respond, so is it? I made it, but it might have been better if I did it with stainless steel, because it would be there like in 200 years, and now they're going to touch it away in 2 years. So, so this whole eco thing, I think we have a responsibility to make really personal and strong things, and I think we all, as designers, we have very small productions, so our amount of energy and waste
environmental
is super
impact.
small. So, but our impact can be bigger because of the things we make and the influence we have on it. But I think they should be personal and so nice that people are not going to throw it away.
Yeah. I'm going to try and get to this question of mine, this kind of multifaceted question, which is, as you can tell, from our earlier conversations, I actually struggle with the idea of design art. I struggle with the idea. And if we look at the topic, at the core of the topic that we're all here to discuss, which is, can we learn from the art world, the fine art world, about bringing design art to market? In other words, can we begin to command the prices that art has from design art galleries? My question is, it's a bit like my own question for me, myself, is it because the market doesn't yet understand, doesn't yet know how to respond? It knows how to respond to art. We've talked about this. The function of art is to lift the soul or enrage the soul or cause some sort of action, or, an artist is committed to an idea or to a passion or to something that they feel strongly. That's what they want to express. A designer, in this context anyway, a designer is doing that thing, but perhaps with different aesthetic rules and regulations, if you like, or a different aesthetic approach. So rather than go straight back to you, Alexis, because I know you probably already developed your ideas about this, let's say, Benoit, are you aiming to educate the collectors, the clients, to the point where they will happily pay fine art prices for design art, or is that never going to happen?
No, I think there is a part of it that's education, but I think as a society as a whole, design has expectations. You said earlier that design has the role to save the world.
That's just me being a bit awkward, but yeah.
But, and I think it's a valid point, but it's like other people can do that also very well. You know, politicians, you know, people who construct things, you know, a lot of things. And design has this sense of a mission that people put on it and a sense of rationality. Well, it's like your chair has to be the best chair ever made. But I think that we're past rationality in design, and we're also past this idea of like, hasn't the best chair already been made? You know, Martin Bass was saying earlier, you can get a wooden chair from 1995 at IKEA, and it's a great chair. But now that we've done that, you know, maybe we can go further. And I think that's what's interesting today with design art, with functional art, with whatever is happening in design right now, is that we're going past rationality and we're entering something that's emotional and irrational, and that does not has to be the most logical object ever made.
I think at some
Good
point
answer,
also we're in that super materialized world, right? We've gone into consumerist world. We're now 2019. I wanted to see that. And so, yeah, when you have everything tenfold, then you start looking for something else. And indeed, we could have stopped at the Tonnet number 48. That was a great chair. That was comfortable. That was lightweight, solid, and I've got a few that's been like in family houses for 75, 100 years, maybe. Good. So we go beyond, and we are human beings, so we are expressions of our times, and we try to do that. I think it's a big thing. I think it's also very important to be your time and to be your age, and that's maybe why, and I'm going back again to Studio Drift, is why we're doing these digital craft kind of pieces, because that's a big part of our age.
Yeah.
We are now that world that went from analog into digital, so let's express that, let's do pieces around that, let's make clocks that move, in my case, for example, with the designers, and so on and so on. And so on.
I mean, that functional
But the world of design is so fracturized. Design is applied for maybe 25 different disciplines under one huge umbrella. And then you have that industrial design, which many of the designers here, I don't know how many that we've seen do industrial design, well, very little. Designers that crossover are very little as well. And then I'm not even talking about graphic design or all the other ones that are still there as well, which is a way of designing. Everything is in the end design. So we can go very wide in that, but we are in the end in that spearhead, right? That's what we're talking about.
So design art, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is that design art is developing as another branch of design.
Yes.
But is it not then, I mean, as gallerists and even as designers, is it not your dream, your aim, your objective to arrive in the market at a place where you can command the prices that fine art does? I mean, Kiki and Joost, who are your clients? Do you work with galleries? There's two questions there, sorry.
Both. And the clients are differ a lot. But personally, no, I don't aim to have the same sales prices as the art world, because also I think a lot of prices in the art world are outrageous and not okay. So I think there needs to be a certain rationality in there.
And the gallerists are gonna wait till you die, because then your prices go up.
Of course.
And then
You can
what
make a lot of money
happens
when
as
you're
well
dead.
in the art, what happened with the art bubble, at a certain point it will explode, and then it will go back to normal again, and then it will go up. So I think that's actually good about the design world, that prices are a bit more reasonable.
Well, there will always be speculation, and speculation inflates a bubble. I think that's for sure. But at the same time, well, not as bad as everywhere else. Indeed, that's true.
Tamar, where do you see your work going? Are you aiming for high, in terms of price? I mean, when we were hearing Studio Drift and Martin talk earlier, the key, I think, to both of them was that they wanted to express themselves. There was about expression, and they were also talking about, the way that money can be earned doing this. But again, as Kiki says, there are unrealistic prices in the fine art world. But because these things they have a function, but it is not the same function as that €19 chair. You can just about sit on it, something like that. You're probably going to fall off it very quickly. It may well break. But where does function end and dream begin when it comes to comes to the market? Because ultimately, it's all tied back down to the market, isn't it? There isn't any money. You guys are not going to be doing what you're doing.
I don't know, because even, a Rietveld chair, I mean, it's a functional chair, but I think people don't collect it as a functional chair.
No,
We're
they
not
don't.
very
This is true.
comfortable on it, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm not.
yeah.
And there are many of the chairs throughout, and we're talking about it always, and I very much appreciate that you're saying that, because that idea of it's a novelty, no, come on. We've had Mendini, we had Rietvelds, we had,
Yeah, like,
throughout
yeah.
history, you always had people that surpassed, and even in
Yeah.
other cultures, because obviously we are, well, white people here sitting on a bench.
Same,
But
yeah, what you
we're
say,
whitewashing it very quickly, but in other cultures, obviously, when a craftsman is a real craftsman, that surpasses into an artist. But there has always been a high-end part of the market.
And
So I
also
think
like
that bullshit needs to end.
no, that's right. What you say, like the Italians in the 70s, like
Exactly.
Michele De Lucchi and Mendini,
Exactly.
and this whole.
And then you have
The Memphis thing.
you have in New York, you have Gaetano, who's
Yeah.
been working, doing stuff in the 80s that would even now be
Yeah.
Before
in
that-
your gallery,
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
But in the
So-
art world as well, I remember I used to read the diaries of Andy Warhol before
Yeah.
going to sleep. It works very well. I can recommend it. And there he describes
gives you
on one
nightmares?
page that he has an order for his Brillo boxes.
Yeah.
And then he's debating how much should I sell it for, because I buy them for 10 cents, and then they come up with a price of $600 each. And I thought it was really interesting to make a price. He just said 600, but we as designers, we'd probably stick in a light bulb and make it into a lamp, a Brillo box lamp, and then it might be only worth 10 euros. So
Yeah.
that's the sort of difference if you also switch to a usable object.
Yep.
People are going to refer to a function
Yeah.
and a price that
Materiality.
is
Yeah.
That's how, I
referred
mean,
to
it's about
an object.
perception, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's also about somebody who will being able to persuade the will go, I am an artist, therefore what I'm doing is worth
But
this amount of money.
This is also the reason, quite honestly, I've given up on trying to sell a chair at 5,000 euros, which is superb, which is groundbreaking material use process, the aesthetics, the whole thing. This is a light, so to speak, but whatever. It goes against the wall. That helps to sell it. That is part of the truth as well. But the idea
It's pretty.
of your being reduced always to your materiality is a part of it. That's a part of it.
Good, good. You're doing well. You're doing very good. You were certainly teaching me stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for you to engage in the conversation. Marika is at the back with a microphone, and she will bring it to whoever waves their hand or moves their hair or picks their nose or whatever. No? Come on, we've got to have a conversation
on.
here. This is a conversation. Somebody, yes. Good. Marika, here. You weren't moving your hair after all. You really did want to ask a question.
I guess it was my turn. Well, we kind of been looking like what's going
Speak
on
up.
right now. We're looking at what's going on right now, but also what's been going on before, retrospect, etc. But I'm curious, since the whole, the whole world, the environment, everything is changing towards being more aware of everything and having to be creating work that is actually, in a sense, good for this world, even if it's just a message or whatever. And we also talked before during the there are many generations now that have this kind of art. We have the Hella Jongerius, we have next generation Maarten Baas, for example. But how do you see this now, for example, the generation of Théophile and Thomas? How do you see this generation manifesting itself as being kind of the, I don't want to call it star designer, but the artist designer, let put it like this?
I'm not sure that I understood your question. Did anybody, if
No.
anybody understand the
To
question,
whom?
they would like to answer it?
I don't completely understand.
Can you
Yeah,
put
I'm
it in
sorry.
like 10 words? You're talking about you're
Is
talking
there
about
still,
star designers becoming star artists. Is that what you're talking about?
well, is there still room for this kind of this artist designer that is going to reach that that stage.
You mean a Max Lamb or a Martin Baas?
For example, yeah, because I've got the feeling that there are more and more of these outings of art design instead of what it before was a lot of people still calling themselves, I am really a furniture designer or a fashion designer. These days we have much and much more blurry kind of definitions in that sense. Such as I am a change maker or I am a provocateur. Do you still see? I'm sorry, I don't know how to.
I think you know what I think we can
it's a
do.
narrative.
As I
that
think we
talks
can.
about.
Shall we take Tamar with this one as the youngest? I presume I'm presuming you're the youngest on the sofa, Tamar. How do you see the work that you're doing? The comparison of some of the other people whose work that you really appreciate that you showed us. Do you see that becoming, do you see the status of those people rising to the level, and this is another word that I want to use, I know Benoit has used it as well, about talking about raising a level and things like that, which I've got questions about. Do you see you and your generation, or maybe people like Kiki and Joost, beginning to get the kind of reputation of a Damien Hirst or a Jeff Koons or something like that in your own art design world? I think I've got an answer to that question, but it's your answer.
I'm not really sure if there's always room for new big names. It always works for the whole market, but I think if you want to be the next Damien Hirst or the next big name, you really need to work towards being a big name. For me, I just want to continue producing stuff, make it better, make it more, get my fair share of what I can get.
Yeah.
But I really don't think of the market or anything. This is up to the galleries.
Maybe you should try and begin to think about it.
For now I'm really focused on just
Benoit, what have
making
you
this
got to
stuff.
say about this? Are we looking for a new generation of Jeff Koonses and Damien Hirsts only in design rather than in art?
I mean, hopefully. I think the point that's important is that right now the market is expanding and it's in constant evolution. And people have been, like Alexis, have been doing it for years and years and years. And I think now we need more actors to be involved in the field and keep expanding the field and the market and give designers the opportunity to express themselves. And then the quality of the work will speak for itself. And then as soon as that market expands, people are more involved, people are more engaged, and that we break free from that prison of function. And also, you were talking earlier about the function and the idea that function takes away from the aesthetic quality somehow. I don't think it's true. So once we've evolved from that, then the market will naturally evolve.
Kiki and Joost, are you aiming to be the next
Damien
whoever's?
Hirst? No, not at all.
No, and I think there's much more room maybe nowadays for a lot of people also to work together, and maybe a lot more small names than a few big names. And I think you can also see that at the big art galleries, for example, that represent much more names than maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think also there you see a tendency of representing more names, so there's more room for.
Also, I think it's not about being or becoming a star. It should be an what is intrinsic?
Person,
A kind of internal value that you want to achieve, and I think it's not about the other things.
Okay, so as we're leading towards, and I hope I'm going to get some more contributions from the audience, but as we're heading towards a kind of conclusion about whether the design art world can take anything or learn anything from the fine art world, is that conclusion going to be that we don't want to go there? We don't want to follow quite the same things.
Of course we do.
We do,
Because
of the money.
We want that recognition, but at the same time the reality is different. That we need to deal with. But I think, all right, so those top art prices are ridiculous. Let's be honest about that. For a living artist who can still produce work, because a big part of it is economics, it's rarity. How many can you still get of it? That's what drives for that artist mostly the pieces up in pricing. And then general just the fact that there are more people who want it than that there are pieces to be given. But reasonable prices, and I might shock you, but anywhere between 100 and 500,000 euros seems quite reasonable to me.
Yeah, of course.
And that's something we need to work towards, but it also depends on the pieces. I think there is a lot of wishful thinking. There's a lot of designers that bring out something that is edgy or something that looks good, that is great, that has expensive materials, whatever you want, and then makes it into a limited edition, and it needs to sell for, even without that and the truth is also in the art world is a bit messed up, but that doesn't mean that we need to toss it all out. We want the good parts of it, and we also do like to stay on that slightly more humane side of collectible design, affordable
so we
art,
want the money, but we want to be nice
art,
people as well.
Well, I think it's not only about the money, but I think I always, whenever I see, for example, a little guitar made by Picasso, he just using some pieces of cardboard and makes a beautiful object, very desirable. It's in a museum, and people want to have it. And I see it around us that designers and also galleries try to have more exclusive materials. Should be marble, bronze, gold leaf. I don't know what. So we, as designers, we need to add more materiality than the artist, and I think that would
that's
be
luxury.
Luxury.
That's luxury, and that's the fine line that you need to guard between luxury and creativity in design. You need to do that, unfortunately.
That sounds like the beginning of a conversation, not the end. Oh my God. Luxury we're going to talk about
Well,
now.
we can talk a lot, but there is much more to be said as well. But
We are running out of time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just hoping that we've got at least one more contribution from the audience. Three. Excellent, good. You're not going to speak because you already have spoken. No, we don't want to hear from Lonica. What about this?
Come on.
This lady here.
Tell me your question, I will incorporate it. I was at a lecture of Paul Smith a few years ago here in Eindhoven, and he was talking about in his career that he was working like this. Like one hand here, making creative work, and one hand here, like making all very commercial work to support himself and sustain his practice. Is that the same way it works for you? Like you showed us a really creative work, but do you need to be also a lot of working in, or is it self-supporting?
Your question is, are these guys doing bread and butter work as well as the wonderful, lovely
how
work?
does it work in the art and design?
Okay. That's a question.
No, we don't do that. We keep always very truthful to ourselves. No.
So you spend most of your time working on your your main.
Yeah.
No, it's a mix of things. We do, like we explained in the beginning, we do these kind of pieces, which are more the gallery pieces, but we also design for international brands, which are bigger productions, and we don't want to restrict ourselves to anything.
And sometimes we create something from our own, and it can result into a product for example, Mooi or another company.
But we don't do that because it's the bread and butter. It's just because it's also interesting and it has a different value.
Sometimes you see something after you created it, and you say, might be better if it's maybe a bit more commercial produced than, because I'm not going to produce so many. So then you try to find a producer for it. But it's never. We almost never start with that intention on a project.
If it helps, I forced Sabine Marcelis to do the Fendi last year at Design Miami because she didn't want to do it, didn't want to take the money. And then people like me come in and we say, no, you're going to try to make the best out of it. It's a great platform for yourself, and you're going to take the money and you're going to do something else with it. But there is also, obviously, money is a grease. You need it. You need it to operate. It's. But that doesn't mean that you need to just go like, I take the money, I give you exactly what you want. No, she went to Fendi, she said, I want work with leather, I want work with this, and I want work, and she was able to do what she wanted to do. But money is important.
Where's the microphone gone? There. Can we just hear a quick one from Lonica? Lonica, it will be quick, will it? And then we've got that gentleman there, and then we're going to finish it.
Okay. What I was thinking when I was listening to you, is it really necessary to sell what we say collectible art? I think from the artistic and designer's perspective, there is the need to express and to make certain works. And then there is the market. And the market is bigger than the galleries. So I think always there has been the need to make this expressive, let's say, half semi-functional works, but that have also another meaning and another expression. And first, of course, you had art galleries, and then the design galleries started entering the art fairs, where was also design section. And I mean that market is very small, but don't you think that that the need to express for designers in whatever form is always going to be needed, but it doesn't have to be 100% sold through a gallery to be successful? I think there's so many brands, and I mean there is really need for this work. There's market, and what do you think about that, Alexis?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't invent this. That money is the factor that defines what success is in the world. That's not something I invented. If it was the other way around, well, gladly, you know. But that is unfortunately how it is. If you're the best soccer player, that's because you're being traded for the most money. And the same goes for designers, and that's how we rank stuff in this world. I'm a sociologist from formation, so I'm sorry for this. But it's a bit of a sad world. Yes, that is true.
So I think, I mean, it sounds all a
but
bit sad and kind of a little bit hard, but I think there is really a need. It's also the question, like, is there a need for these works? But I think there is a need. Maybe there was one way to sell it is through galleries, but there are architects, there are brands, there are all sort of people that are in need for expressive way of using space and function in another way. So I think, yeah, don't be so.
Well, no, but that I agree on. That I agree on. But
That's also what's happening. You know, people know how to find us, and of course, there's the world is so open nowadays through websites, Instagram. So you can also work closely together with clients, like one-on-one.
Right.
And maybe it's also handy and very good if you have a good product, maybe in a small series that it could be sold throughout a gallery.
But
So I
yeah,
think
it's
it's a world of both. I
True
think.
what
Yeah,
Lonneke said, it's not the only way. There can be different ways around it.
Yeah. There's a gentleman over there who's been waiting patiently for the microphone. Marieka. Is it a short question, sir?
Yeah,
Or
I
a
hope
mini
so.
speech?
I'm thinking about movies, making movies. So I'm thinking about Spielberg and Fellini. So Fellini makes, in my concern, art movies. Spielberg, I don't think so. But how are you seeing yourself? Because it's the same topic, I think, because you are making design, but it is the same way as making art movies. So, how do you look to it?
What's the question? Is that are these guys? What
The
do these guys
question
think
is,
of this?
to which person you feel most related, to Spielberg or to Fellini?
I would say Tarantino. Okay, so that's also an option.
There you go.
No,
There's your
for
answer.
me, it's the same. Tarantino is also an art movie maker.
It's a great
It's a
question, I
question.
think, for every one of the panel, gallerists included. So we got Justus Tarantino. Kiki, which filmmaker would you be if you could be in terms of your own work?
No, that's not a filmmaker.
that's
Yeah, if I would say an artist, Pipi Lotterist.
With the movie.
Okay.
But with her movie of, smashing the cars with the flowers.
Yeah. Thomas?
I think I would compare myself. I would like to be compared to Quentin Dupieux,
Okay.
a guy who used to make music, and then now makes completely abstract, absurd movies, French movies.
Okay, good. Benoit, bring us back to earth, for God's sake.
I won't. I have no idea. I don't know how to answer this question because, sometimes, on Sunday evenings, I'm George Lucas, but then sometimes you need to be Fellini, and it just depends what the time calls for. Like, I don't want to be only one movie director. I don't want to watch only one kind of movie for the rest of my life.
That's a good answer.
And I think, I
What about
won't do
Alexis?
it.
Alexis, Alfred
Well, if
Hitchcock,
I have to
maybe?
choose, I quickly look him up who it is, but it's Visconti. I think if I want to create atmospheres, worlds in which you dive, you know, you think of Rocco and his brothers. I'm thinking of Il Gattopardo, which are movies that you're in it, and it's a completely different universe. But it could also be, even if I think of it, because obviously I have a very contemporary aesthetics in what I like. Could be those movies that just take you elsewhere, which put an entire environment, and that's what through the addition of all the designers together, I try to realize in the end, is to try to set forward the contemporary aesthetics, and that's what those movies do too.
I'm going to tell you who I want to be. I want to be both the Coen brothers. Okay,
Good choice.
ladies and gentlemen, we've got to finish. Those people who are coming to the dinner, probably most of you actually, there's a bus waiting outside. It's waiting outside there, so don't delay, but do wait to help me thank Joost, Kiki, Tamar, Benoit, and Alexis.
Thank you.